Hello, everyone. It is 5:30 on the dot, so we will get started. Give me a quick yes or a quick thumbs up if you can hear me.
Yes.
Right, great. So I'm seeing some yeses and some thumbs up. Awesome. Thanks so much for that. All right, so what we're doing today is we've got some of our friends here with us to provide some information for you. What I want to do first is to welcome everybody. My name is Homero Escandon. I am the president of APIC San Diego chapter for a few months now. As some of you might know, we have started this webinar series as a resource for not only our membership, but our network and our community. And so welcome, welcome, welcome to all of you. We are very, very glad to have you here. And we're also very glad to have our friends from Scallion here today to talk to you about the industrial maturity assessment. Our presenter today is Mark Sexton. And Mark was, Mark was born in Puyallup, he can probably correct me, Washington, the third of 6 children. He worked his way through college, getting a Bachelor of Science in Metallurgical Engineering from Washington State University, and later a Master of Business Administration from City University in Seattle. He was an early advocate for advanced quality tools in the US, having conducted his first designed experiment in 1985 that resulted in important hard savings. After joining Boeing in 1986, Mark created a personal development plan to become an expert in the skills that became commonly known as Six Sigma and APQP. This development plan was used for the basis of Boeing's Supplier Quality Engineering Training Program, as well as the foundation for obtaining a master's in quality and manufacturing. In addition to his bachelor's degree and his MBA, Mark has received certificates as Certified Quality Engineer, Six Sigma Black Belt, and AS9100 Lead Auditor. Mark's focus has always been on creating value person rather than checking a box for compliance. Qualities and mindset that make him a senior consultant at Scallion, a consulting firm that focuses on operations performance improvement. Mark has lived in Mexico, England, and Singapore for various work assignments, and he's traveled extensively, including paragliding in Brazil and shark diving in the Bahamas. Oh my goodness. All right, so we are happy to have Mark here. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn it over to Mark, and he will chat with you guys for a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Mark, take it away.
I appreciate it. Everybody can hear me, I hope. Good? You can hear me? Homero? Can you hear me? Uh-oh.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we're having trouble hearing you, Mark.
Now, can you hear me now? Some people can hear me.
I can hear you, Mark.
Okay.
Sorry about that. That was just me. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you, Homero, and thanks everybody for joining tonight. What we're going to do, I'm going to introduce to you industrial maturity, the assessment, what we're looking at in industrial maturity, what it's about, how it relates to APQP, which most of you probably have heard of or involved in some way or another. And then we're going to have questions. I'll try to take a break at some point to get any questions, so that if I skip over things or use acronyms I shouldn't use, you can catch me and not fall behind. So that's pretty much the format. So we'll get right into it. Okay, so the first kind of the teaser questions. Are you sure you picked world-class suppliers? And with this, really the question you want to ask is, do you have a supply base, and including you as a supplier to your customer, you have a supply base that allows you to be world-class? Yeah, and what does that world-class mean? Well, there's standards in quality and on-time delivery of world-class that is in the 99.7% or Six Sigma levels of quality and on time. Depending on your industry, it can be higher or a little bit lower than that. But more and more world class is your ability to respond, your ability to turn things around in a very short period of time. So your flexibility is also part of what makes you world-class. 26-week lead time might not be acceptable, especially if your competition is giving it in a 13-week lead time, which makes it easier for your customers. So world-class is defined by your business element. So the question then is, do you have a process for selecting your supplier base, for evaluating your own company to make sure that everything's set up for success? And if you haven't, what's missing? Do you know what's missing? How do you find out what's missing? That's really what this maturity assessment is all about. So we're going to go over introducing what the industrial maturity is, kind of give you an idea of where it comes from and what's going on there. Then how we assess it, specifically the sections that we break it down into at Scallion, compare it and contrast it with APQP. And then if we have time, there's some tools and techniques I'd like to talk to you about, just to put some added things in your toolkit if you don't already have them. And then we'll have a slight wrap up. So that's kind of the schedule today. I gotta apologize, I'm not really fancy into the graphs, so there's not gonna be all the animation that you had last week. If you were on last week's seminar was talking about risk that is associated with unknown things, like pandemics. What industrial maturity is about risk of known things we know are going to happen, especially if we don't have the systems in place to prevent them. So what is this industrial maturity? The main part about the industrial maturity is looking at your company or your supplier's company or my company, any company, and saying, is it robust? Is it repeatable? Is it reliable? And does it have a system that is getting better and better every day? Does it have a continuous improvement system that works? That's really what it is. Now, in industrial maturity, there are, since the time that they came out with the Ford brought over the Toyota system back in the late 80s, or late 70s, 1979, 1980, brought that over, opened the Supplier Institute. I got a chance to go to that way back when. There have been things that have building up and building up from TQM, total quality management, the ISO 9000 requirements coming in, and you have APQP, you have Six Sigma, you have all of these different things that have come up. Well, what industrial maturity is as a business, looking at a business, has it taken advantage of all of these things that we've learned over time? Is it utilizing them, and is it performing at a high performance level, utilizing all of these tools that have been created over time on how to make processes reliable? So that's really what it is. And mostly what we're going to be looking at is the on-time delivery and on-quality delivery. So you're 100% on time, 100% quality, and responsiveness. How does your logistics work? Been to a lot of companies that, they make a product that has 20 minutes of touch time, but it takes 6 months to get from one end to the other. To build it, just because of the way the logistics is set up. So those are things that would be considered immature. A mature system, things are moving, inventory moves all the time. That gives you the ability to respond to your customers' needs a lot faster without causing interruption to your own flow. If I'm going too fast, somebody wave at me. If I'm going too slow, somebody shoot me, whatever is necessary. So that's what it is. Now, where we get involved, Scallion, we're Scallion's two divisions. The division that I'm in is a division that's just operations excellence. That's what we do physical, on the floor, help companies become excellent in their operations activity. And we do it all the way from the request for information, supplier selection, design, development, the whole thing, and into serial production and even in post-production if necessary. But the things we're going to talk about today primarily are here: the industrial maturity assessment, which can be done anytime during the process, but the earlier you do it in the process, the more leverage you're going to have, the more return on investment you're going to have per dollar you spend. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the advanced product quality process, which ties in and is mostly in the development process that you would use on a new project. Okay, so I'll hit the page down button, and then went twice, so I'll hit the page up button. Okay, so here are the 9 areas or chapters that we break down our maturity assessment in. Each chapter has 5 or 6 issues that are associated with it. Each issue has up to 10 questions associated with it. So there's well over 500 different questions that we're going to be looking at when we do an assessment, but it's done in 2 days with 2 people. A lot of them are interactive. A lot of them you can see right away whether they do it. So here's the 9. We're going to go through each of those individually, talk a little bit about what they are. What we're doing is we're trying to get right away to find out what the risks are, prioritize those risks on what needs to be fixed, figure out what quick wins you can have, what long-term actions need to be done. But what we're looking at is not a sales pitch from if this is done at a supplier or at a company, it doesn't matter. We're not looking for a sales pitch. We're looking for evidence. We're looking at the floor. We want to know what's used day in and day out and what's effective. Maturity assessment is they're used for different things. All right, they're used for mergers and acquisitions. They're used for supplier selection. They're used for quality improvement plans. Each of those, the person who is asking for the assessment is going to want different information. So we customize it somewhat to make sure we get them the information they want. Also, what they want us to share with whomever we're assessing. And then we make a go forward plan after that. So in an assessment, really there's 5 phases of maturity that we broke it down to. And the first phase is we don't know anything, right? Until, hey, we're aware, we're just not using it. To where we're aware we're using it, but we're not really getting our money's worth. But sometimes we're getting our money's worth. Until you get to where we're always getting our money's worth. And finally, in the level 5 maturity, you're a leader, somebody who's going to want to come and look at that. Now, each of these 9 different chapters, you would have a different level of maturity, or you might have the same. You might be a 5 in all of them, but you'd have a different rating for each of the five chapters as you go along. So that's, pretty quick on what it is. So this would be a good time to go in. This is just, kind of the going back and saying, hey, for new product introduction, this is the kind of thing we would tailor the report for supplier selection. This is what we'd tailor it for. Quality improvement plan, this is what we'd tailor it for. Just to help. And if you were to do these assessments, you got to know its purpose. So this is kind of a place, Merle, if somebody has a question or wants me to speed up, slow down, or do any dancing or anything, that'd be a good point.
Sure. So if you have a question at this point or a comment, go ahead and place it in the chat. We'll just wait a couple moments and see if anyone has anything. If not, we can move on. But as we walk through the presentation, go ahead and if a question does come up, throw it in the chat and we'll stop at certain points and address some of those questions.
And if any of the questions really need to be addressed at a time, you can interrupt me.
So we do have a couple of questions, Mark.
Okay.
The first one is from Michelle Else, and her question is there an overall score or just a score for the 9 areas?
There's an overall score as well. When you're doing supplier selection, you're going to get each supplier scored an overall score, which kind of gives you, hey, this is how much we're going to have to invest in each supplier in order to bring them up to speed, or this is the risk we're going to have to invest or mitigate against. So you can compare one to another. But if you're doing an improvement plan, the scores on each individual chapter are of more value.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mark. And we have another question. Is this something applicable to all industries?
No, it's applicable to any manufacturing industry. So I've worked in medical device, aerospace, electronics, defense. Any manufacturing, the service sector, we would look at something totally different. Because a lot of this just doesn't apply to service sector type businesses. But any manufacturing business, anytime you're producing a good, we would do something else for software. In fact, we would have the other side of our consulting company take care of it for software. That's what they do.
Okay, that's it for questions.
Okay, so we'll move down and talk about the different areas. So the first area is called industrial documentation. It sounds like we're looking for a big stack of books. We're not. What we're looking at is really we're looking for value stream maps. If you are aware of those, manufacturing production flow, process flow, something that shows that you have the visibility to know where the roadblocks are in your system, where the bottlenecks are, how much stuff flows, where WIPIS gets stuck, where it moves. Do you have that? Do you have a picture, something visual that you can understand and everybody can understand and work to? So are you really able to calculate your capacity? Or is your capacity just calculated, well, this machine can do 5 an hour, so 5 an hour is what I'm going to put in the calculation, which isn't true because you often don't get to use the machine all that hour, and you often don't have the whip ready or the material ready to use it. So do you have that visibility? That's what the industrial documentation, it's just the title it is. Materials management just takes it to the next level, and now we're looking at the logistics. So before it was looking at, hey, do you have the overall picture of the flow? And now do you have the procedures in place, the processes in place, the handling in place to get the parts where they need to be, when they need to be, to flow things through your factory. So that's what your materials management is all about, is it coordinated? Industrial resource management, you got really 2 kinds of resources that you really need to manage. One is the people and the other is the equipment. This looks at both of them, and it looks at it to say, what do you got today? How do you make it today? And is it sufficient today? Is it capable today? And is it still going to be capable in 5 years? With the training, the way you do training and the way you mandate training and the way you mandate equipment maintenance, equipment replacement, and qualify equipment. So is your both those resources well managed? Do they exist today, capable to meet whatever contract we're looking at? And if not, what needs to be done? If so, are they stable and robust so that they're going to be that way in 5 years? Okay. I hit the down arrow, so we'll see if it goes down. Give it a second. Try that again. Okay. The next section we're going to look at is the tooling, engineering. So really what this gets into is, are you designing it so that it's capable at a Six Sigma level, that it's going to put build products right all the time? And do you have a way to qualify or certify it so that you know that it works? And a lot of times, people, do a one test and it worked that one test, but I had engineers and I had experts and I had my best operator working on it. And so it worked. And then I put it out in the factory and it doesn't work. And why doesn't it work? Well, because I don't have the engineer and the best operator and 16 people looking at it. And by the way, I moved it and it's no longer tuned precisely right. So we're looking at all of that. We're looking at how you store it and how you manage it, how you transfer it, how you handle it. The section 5 is the biggest section. That is the proactive approach. This is where the APQP, process failure mode effect analysis, design failure mode effect analysis, control plans, all of this stuff is looked at to say, hey, do we have the process in engineering where manufacturing, quality, and everybody's involved so that it's engineered for success? And then do we have the processes in place in the factory so that it can be produced successfully? Purchasing control, that's just, are you flowing it down to your supply chain? And is your supply chain, are you taking the life cycle of your whole contract into your whole obligations into your supply chain model there? And again, there's 5 or 6 sections to each of these. I'm just hitting the highlights. Non-conformity management. This is a lot to do with regulatory. Are you segregating? Do you have a way to keep bad product from getting mixed in with good product? That kind of thing. But also, do you have an 8D root cause corrective action system? And does that root cause corrective action system really look at your systems, find the weaknesses, fix the weaknesses, implement them, and then spread them out? Manufacturing and inspectability. This is both, were they involved in the design and the setup, but also do I have a control plan that works into my manufacturing work instructions? And says my manufacturing work instructions have the right visibility, the pictures, everything they need in order to be able to produce right? I mean, is it visual for the operator to know that they built it right? Or does the operator have to look at a blueprint and screen and make all kinds of decisions to determine whether it's right? And it makes a big deal on how much quality you get. Operators should know it's right without having to look at a drawing. They might have to look at the drawing to build it, but not to know that it's right. That your tooling and your visual management should help with. If it doesn't, and you're having quality problems, we'll figure out a way to fix that. And then the product life cycle is really here, what we're looking at is you got a contract out there or an obligation to your customers to support the service, whatever that is. And if they call you with a problem and say, hey, I got a problem with this part, if you serialize your parts, you say, hey, what's the serial number? And you can go back and figure out, hey, what diode was used on that, or what crank was used, whatever was used that they're having a problem with. If you got that configuration management, that traceability, if you don't, then you can't support them. You got to say, hey, can you send me a picture of what it looks like? And maybe I can find an engineer that worked on it back 3 years ago that would know what model this was. So we look at, do you have that kind of control so that you can support, do you collect the right information so you can support your customers per whatever your organization's obligations are? Or in the case if we were doing this for a supplier for a company, for whatever the company contract requirements flowed down to that supplier are. So that is now a good place for questions if any came up there, Humero, because we've covered what the assessment, what a maturity is and what assessment is, or at least the highlights of them. And now I'm going to go into the APQP and the how they contrast and complement each other.
Sure. So there is one question in the chat box, one new question. Question is, do we need to go through the whole 9 chapters of the assessment, or can it be customized? If so, how do you customize the scope of the assessment?
We start out with what your goal is. So if your goal is a quality improvement plan. This is a supplier that has been having problems. They're not doing things on time, and their corrective action doesn't affect their systems. They're not getting back and doing system corrective actions. Well, we might look at the manufacturing and inspectability. We might, so we're not going to look at the product life cycle. We would look at non-conforming management. We would look at the tooling and the proactive. We might not look at the purchasing control at all, especially if they're just using COTS material and it has nothing to do with design to print. So we'd look at that and say, hey, what systems do we need to look at? The whole assessment though is generally 2 days of actual looking at it. So each of these sections is only a couple hours. So you don't gain a lot by cutting them out, but you definitely want to focus on the right things. So you spend a little more effort where you need to for what you're after.
Okay, good. That was the only question at this juncture.
Okay. So yeah, a good example. One I just did one of the key things you're going to want is, are these guys going to be able to produce on time? Well, there's definitely parts of it that affect on-time delivery more than quality or design capability. So we look more at that and closer. Okay, so hit down. Okay, so if this, I just put this up. If you've never seen it, before we were talking about the maturity assessment, you had 5, if you will, stages or areas of maturity where you went from worst to first. APQP has 5 phases. Each phase is a set activity that is done in those phases. So APQP is a set thing with set activities that you establish and customize for your development of a new product. Goes through the 5 phases: planning, product design, product verification, process design, and then the process verification, and then your production design and your production verification, which is your rate readiness review. And then you have your serial production, where you have a handoff that goes from the development people to the production people. That is not just a cut off, right? There's a handoff, and you have what you put together a package that says, yep, we've got our pre-production approval process complete. The PPAP, here's all the evidence that we have done everything. Here's all the evidence that the manufacturing and inspection people accept responsibility, and we're ready to go. An important aspect of this is that activities in here are scheduled and they need to be completed, and the program stops if people are not ready to go on. Because anything that you miss in your planning, if you miss it there, by the time you get up here, you've 10 times the cost to fix it now, right? So you're going to fix it later. So APQP is more focused on the maturity of your development process, but it's very specific. Did somebody have a question? Somebody unmuted themselves, so for a reason. Okay, we got to get going here. I know I'm going over. This is just quickly a little bit the difference, although they're very complementary and work together. SEMA, Industrial Maturity Assessment, is a system-oriented thing that is all about continuous improvement. And APQP is a program-oriented thing that we have very specific actions that people are trained to and perform to. So that's the difference. Now, what I'd like to go on to next is you've probably seen a fishbone diagram. But I use this a lot in my understanding of, especially if I'm doing a quality improvement plan, but really when I look at it. Now you can, if you've done the fishbone, you see a few added things here. Leadership and culture, that's the tail. That's what really drives it. So one of the big things here in leadership is, hey, do you have a clear and concise and consistent message that you're sending out to people? Or are you saying, hey, quality is number one, but I need you to cut corners to save money, right? So is the leadership consistent there? And in the culture, do you have a culture where everybody's involved and shares their opinion, or is your a culture where everybody takes orders, right? The other thing we add is the logistics, which is a big factor in the maturity of a process. In constraint theory, if you've read the goal, the logistics is a big part, and that's usually left out in a typical fishbone understanding. And then we add the customer service at the end. So just as a takeaway, those are things that when you're doing, whether you're doing a fishbone to develop a new process or develop a new product and say, hey, do we have all our ducks in a row? Or if you're doing it for corrective action, here are additional things to look at. The way it's laid, the reason it's laid out here is the way it is back here in this area, every dollar you spend has 10 times the value that you factor. I'm sorry, was there a question? Somebody unmuted and has a question? Okay. Okay, so so this is just some a takeaway, and here's another takeaway, just that shows that, hey, these are all of these tools that we're talking about, our methods that we're talking about, that we look in. Are you using them in your to make you a mature company, or your suppliers using them? And they're also used in APQP. So here's some tools. There are over 50 of these tools and techniques. I just put some of them down here. One that people in procurement are more interested in is this plan for every part. If you haven't ever done that, PFEP, that is where I define long lead to match my planning cycle. So if my planning cycle is 6 weeks, anything that requires me to do purchase activity before that 6 weeks, before I know when it's going to be built, that's long lead. And therefore I have to have a plan in place or some structure in place that assures that when they launch the plan 6 weeks out, I'm not going to be surprised and now have to expedite or have a shortage and not be able to meet my customer needs. So it does two things. It drives the buyers to find suppliers that can supply faster than my planning cycle time, right? But it also drives all of the activity that I need, whether it's consignment or other mitigations ahead of that. So, you know,
yeah, hey, sorry to stop you, Mark. We got a couple of folks that are unmuted. If you could please mute yourselves.
Okay. So actually, we'll go on. This is we're almost to the end here, so give me a minute here. So this is kind of virtual, but this is the expectation. Anytime that you have an uncontrolled process, you're not doing everything degrades over time. If you don't do anything, it's going to degrade over time. And so when you first get with a supplier, you're going to have the best day you ever had, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse because you don't have anything to maintain it, right? So if you have something to maintain it, like a good corrective action system and some decent processes, you're going to be able to correct this, and you're going to have slow improvement. And this improvement, as you get out here, that's maturity, right? And then if you do a APQP project, you're expecting at least 50%, if not 75% of all problems to be eliminated before they happen. So what would have happened, or the number that happened on the last program, you expect 50% fewer on this program because it incorporates everything you learned on the last program. And then if you, okay, so if you do the assessment and you tie in the assessment with projects that use the discipline of the APQP, you expect your programs to be mature very quickly, and they will be. So that really is, I know I went a little fast, but I tried to keep it at a half an hour, and I think I did. So this is me. This is my name spelled wrong again, but that's all right. We'll fix that. So are there any questions?
So at this time, if you do have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, no questions in the chat box. Looks
Okay.
like
Either I explained everything perfectly, or I went too fast and people didn't get it.
Homero, I may have a couple of questions for
Sure.
you. So, hey, Mark, thank you for the presentation. Can you tell us a little bit how the industrial maturity assessment methodology was built up? Where is it coming from?
Well, it's built up over years. Primarily, it's coming from really the aerospace and auto industries, as well as the medical device industry. But it's over years. All of these techniques have been put in place, and companies need to get more and more mature. They need to be better at using their resources and their inventory. So it's just a collection of all kinds of improvement activities that have been learned, that have been put together, and some of your bigger OEMs have come out with plans to say, hey, we need to have suppliers that know these techniques. We need and use them effectively, because we need to be able to rely on our suppliers, because they no longer want to carry all the safety stock and all the risk associated with not having these in place. Did that answer your question, Sebastian?
Yeah.
So we've got a question in the chat box. Once the assessment is completed, are there recommendations made to the process assessed?
Yes, there would be recommendations made and can be made both to the person that was assessed and the person requesting the assessor, depending on what the person requesting the assessment wanted. But there will be recommendations that both include, hey, here's your risk, here's a way to mitigate the risk, here's a plan to go forward, what you should do to get it, and here's what we would recommend doing first to get the low-hanging fruit, if you will. So you'll get all of that with the wrap up. Did that answer whoever question that was?
Right, so we have a couple other questions here. So APQP seems to apply well for program-based business, short memory required to capture lessons learned. But how easily is it applied to product-based businesses that have multi-year product life where lessons learned happens over years and many different people are involved?
Yeah, that's the key of what a good PFMEA, process failure modes effect analysis, if done right, what that does is capture lessons learned from all kinds of sources, all kinds of people, because what it drives you down to do is you get down to the nitty gritty in a PFMEA. So you're getting down to, am I gluing the process? When I glue the process, am I cleaning it right? What's my risk of it not being cleaned right? And now I got to ask people what experience they've had in not cleaning the surface, not prepping the surface, not doing it. So that is where all your lessons learned get put in, and you pull in all of the people that ask those questions. So it's not lessons learned as, hey, I got a book of lessons learned. It's lessons learned as, I'm going to be gluing a part. I need to know what all the risks are associated with gluing that part, and I need to break that down. And so I need to know what the probability is of not preparing the surface properly. Who knows that? And how do I figure it out? And then how did they solve the problem so that they fixed it, and so that I'm not going to have it on my program. So that's doing a PFMEA right, is where you gather all of those lessons learned. So that is part of your APQP process. But it's on a new product. If you've got an existing product and you want to you would also, if you got an existing product that has a low quality yield at the time, you know, it's more money to fix things after they're designed than before they're designed. But you run a PFMEA, you find out what your occurrences are based on what your yield rates are, and now you go in and you break the areas down, the process steps where you're having low yields, and you break them down into micro process steps, and then go ask and get the lessons learned for each of those micro steps, so that you can say, okay, this is what I'm going to do to fix that, and this is how it's going to reduce my risk of producing a bad product. And now I know where I'm at and where I'm going. So do I still got more I got to fix, or is this going to get me to the yields that I need? So a little more expensive to do it then, but it can be done at any time. But that's a good question. That's a great question.
Okay, we have another question, Mark. The question is, can APQP process be implemented after the product goes into production?
No, the SEMA can. The APQP process is very specific. You do a design, you bring in your manufacturing and your inspection people, and your test people, and you have this gate that says, okay, I'm ready to go and do qual test. I've done qual test. Now I got to go, and every qual failure, did I go and analyze it? Did I really get root cause? Did I prove that I got that out of there, that it's not going to happen in production? So the APQP specifically is a set of activities to get you to a reliable serial production. Once you're in serial production, then, and you have problems, then you're going to do a maturity assessment to figure out what those are. Now, you can use many of the tools that are in an APQP because we use those tools in the maturity assessment as well. As you saw on that slide, there's a lot of tools that overlap. But a maturity assessment can apply anytime. APQP is really just a development activity. Okay.
Okay, any more questions at this time? Either raise your hand, unmute yourself, or type it in the chat. I am putting Mark and Sebastian's contact info in the chat so that if anybody wants to contact them with further questions, maybe you walk away from the presentation in a few minutes, you think, oh man, I should have asked this question. Please contact these guys. So thank you again for everyone who participated today, and a huge thank you to Sebastian and to Mark for presenting this topic today. If you are looking for further resources on this specific topic, please do contact them directly. And always as a reminder, APEX San Diego is here for your training needs. And if you are interested in any of our programs, go to apex-sd.org. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Thanks, Romero. Have a good night.